we can circle back around to that because Pete Nakos of On3 Sports joins us now, and there's a great deal of portal news, great deal of college football news going on right now as bowl season rolls on and we get ready for the college football playoff quarterfinals. Pete, thank you so much for joining us. With everything that's going on right now, there's obviously a great deal of local interest in what's been happening with wide receiver Mike Mathews. I know that you have done some reporting on this at on3.com, which is, of course, well worth your subscription. Great intel there on a variety of different things, specifically the transfer portal recently. What can you tell us on the latest on this Tennessee wide receiver?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, guys. So Mike Mathews, right, the five-star freshman, he is not yet officially in the transfer portal, right? News broke Saturday night, Sunday morning, however you want to look at it, that he was going to enter. He has yet to officially enter. He remains in negotiations with Tennessee about a possible return for 2025. It remains unclear at this time what direction this is trending. The Tennessee Compliance Department has definitely made sure to wait as long as possible to put his name in, and he's not officially in yet. But Tennessee continues to try to work the phones to get him to return for the next season.
And so, what I guess from your perspective, based on the intel that you've been able to gather, why was there interest in even exploring this as an option for Mathews?
Yeah, I think we all saw the Nico rumors flying around Saturday night. I think there was a little concern there. I'm not saying that those rumors were true. I'm just saying I think that those started to spread on social media and that maybe gave some Mike Mathews some pause. But then beyond that too, I mean, I think, I don't know if you necessarily went in and made this decision, knowing if you wanted to leave Tennessee for good. I think it may have been a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction. That's what Tennessee's trying to tell him is that, hey, come back. Nico's back. We're going to try to keep building this wide receiver room around you and a few other pieces. And that's kind of the pitch that Tennessee's making right now from everything I've been told.
Pete Nakos of On3 Sports here with us on 104.5 The Zone. You can follow him on Twitter for the latest in portal news, the latest in college football news, at Pete Nakos _.
So, Pete, could you give us kind of a summation of the timeline in terms of the deadlines? I know the transfer portal technically is closed. Players can no longer submit their papers. But where are we at as far as when we could get another update on Mike Mathews, just given the timeline of how things are structured at this point?
Yeah, so Saturday at midnight was the deadline to request and file paperwork. So everything I've been told is that Mike has filed his paperwork, and now it's just a matter of time until Tennessee Compliance puts his name in the transfer portal. But during that time period, right, Tennessee's doing everything they can to get him to stay. And in terms of when I think he'll exactly go in, I think that this timeline is going to become harder to understand because he filed the paperwork on the weekend after the Christmas holiday, and then you would think the 48 hours would expire today, but he's not going to go in tomorrow either because it's the New Year's Day holiday. So theoretically, he could go in as late as Thursday the way this is tracking.
So obviously wide receiver is a big need for Tennessee at this point. If Mathews does go through with this, he would be the sixth receiver to go into the portal out of Tennessee's wide receiver room. You reported that the Vols have entered the race for the USC transfer, Zachariah Branch, who is in the portal. What's the latest you've heard on that in terms of other teams that are interested in what the best fit could be for Branch moving forward and where the Vols would stack up?
Yeah, so he's, as we all know, right, he's already visited Georgia and Arizona State. That was before the dead period, before Christmas. And now he's looking at Tennessee. Texas has already also been mentioned as a possible other visit spot. Talking to a couple sources this morning, there's nothing solid yet with him visiting Knoxville, but they're still trying to do everything they can to get him on a visit. And by no means, and what I'm saying is saying that he's not going to go on a visit. There just isn't a solid date yet.
So with everything that's been going on across the sport, there's a great deal of interest here locally in Shedeur Sanders, obviously getting ready to leave Colorado and enter the NFL draft. That also leads to some level of intrigue around his father, Deion, and what his future might be with the Buffaloes. What sense are you getting, given that they've just secured Caden Salter through the portal, who was also formerly at Tennessee for a period of time? before going on to Liberty. What's kind of the sense around Deion's future, and what indications are you getting on that from players or people who are involved with the portal process for players who are considering a future with the Buffaloes?
If I've learned one thing, it's not to try to predict what Deion Sanders is going to do. So that's that for starters. I mean, I don't think Keaton Salter goes there if he doesn't think Deion's going to be around next year. Now, obviously, things can change so fast in this day and age in sports, so I don't want to rule anything out. But I would imagine that Salter landing at Colorado came with some sort of assurance or something that Deion would be there next year. But yeah, I mean, the other thing too, guys, is, I mean, the rumors are just going to continue to run rampant until they're actually drafted and we see where they go and things like that. Looks like the Giants will not get him, though.
Titans fans rejoice.
I'm fascinated at not just the Deion impact in the transfer portal in terms of players going to Colorado, but the Travis Hunter impact now in the portal. Because obviously, to circle it back to Tennessee, Boo Carter, the Tennessee defensive back, announced he will return to Tennessee, reportedly with the stipulation that he's going to get a look on offense. And an exciting punt returner, that's a conversation that's been had around Boo Carter before. But it makes me wonder just how much more of that we're going to see. Guys that believe they can sort of bring a Travis Hunter-like impact after seeing that it is possible. Do you get any sense that might become more commonplace for players that want to play both ways and can use that as a leverage point in terms of staying or going?
I mean, it's definitely on the rise, right? Even take away Boo Carter, right? Jalen Mbakwe, the talented defense back for Alabama, has gone through a similar process to Boo Carter, where he goes in the portal, pulls out, and then it comes out that he wants to play on the offense side of the ball too. And it might look like in 2025 that he's going to spend most of his time on the offense side of the ball. So I'm not ready to call it a trend yet, but there's definitely some sort of a Travis Hunter impact going on.
So Tennessee fans, there is some concern right now at the wide receiver position, and you just kind of laid out the latest that you have on Mike Mathews, but there's no question that there needs to be more in that wide receiver room. It's going to be a big point of emphasis for them this offseason. And Vols fans are talking about NIL, how there needs to be more done. It was a place where Tennessee was thought to be kind of ahead of the curve. Now are the Vols falling behind? That's the discussion happening with the fan base. To you, what is the perception of Tennessee football in terms of their transfer portal approach and where they sit right now in this NIL landscape?
I mean, listen, Tennessee's always been the leader in NIL, so I think the last thing I'm going to do is come out and say that, like, they're struggling. I mean, if we go back 2 years, I mean, they were the pacemakers for this all. Now, do I think a lot of other schools across college football have gotten a lot more dollars together and it's become a lot more competitive? Yes. Do I think that revenue sharing is going to make it a little bit more of an even playing field? Yeah. But I also think, though, that Tennessee has deep donor pockets in a similar sense to what we're seeing at Texas and Ohio State and Oregon. And I think the Vols will always be in that leading group when it comes to dollars being able to spend. Now, I think the one thing that we're going to have to keep watching is you look at Ohio State, they only spent $20 million on their roster. Everyone says that's a lot of money. In the big scheme of things, they actually did a fairly good job of watching how much they spent. And they loaded dollars on their top players. I think Tennessee probably needs to do that a little bit more. I think they've done a very good job of making sure everybody on the roster gets some dollars, and maybe that changes in the future.
At Pete Nakos _ is where you can follow him. On3.com is where you can read his insights and intel on the world of college sports business and the transfer portal. He's been breaking all manner of news throughout the course of this process. I'm sure every story, every storyline has its own unique set of circumstances that you're required to adapt and adjust to, Pete. But from your standpoint in this cycle, what's been the most interesting story to document, to follow along, to dig up more intel on?
This one happened so quickly that I wouldn't say it was like fun to dig up intel on, because didn't last as long as I would have liked to try to cover it. But the John Mateer situation at Oklahoma is fascinating from the lens of, we all waited for 3 weeks, it felt like, to see if he was going to go in the portal and then follow his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, to Oklahoma. But behind the scenes, I mean, Miami offered a hefty NIL package to give him a lot to think about that. And then, I mean, beyond that too, I think it's kind of leaked a little bit, but I know behind the scenes for a fact that North Carolina was a legit factor. And the minute Bill Belichick got on the phone with John Mateer, a lot of things changed in that recruitment, and Oklahoma really had to step up. So that's like a behind the scenes one that's been interesting to cover. The Zachariah Branch thing has been really interesting. It has not been the easiest to get info on what is going on in that recruitment. And I think that a lot of people thought after they took those Georgia and Arizona State visits that this recruitment was going to shut down. And now, a day before the dead period ends, it looks like they're going to take at least 1 to 2 more visits, if I had to bet. So that's going to be one that I think is going to have some more twists and turns in the days to come.
You bring up Belichick and his level of impact. How consequential has that been for North Carolina so far? Obviously, understanding that it's very, very early on in this marriage between the two.
Yeah, as someone who is from the Northeast, right? Like, I'm 27, I'm 28. Like, Bill was like an idol of mine, like as a kid. So it is extremely odd to cover college football and be like, oh yeah, Bill Belichick's the head coach of North Carolina. Like,
you mentioned him so casually, it's like he's been doing it for years.
Yeah, well, to me, it feels like it. But in terms of his impacts and everything, I think that it will be an interesting case study to see how it all kind of unfolds. Like, what Deion has been able to do at Colorado has been amazing, and all kudos to him. I think that what Deion can do is be charismatic and sell guys on the recruiting pitch, and he obviously does a good job of that when he gets guys to Boulder. It's been well documented how he doesn't want to go on the road, obviously. For Bill, it's all about selling that NFL pitch. I'll just be interested to see if guys buy into that, and if he starts making an impact on the trail, or if he attempts to run it almost like an NFL model where he just dips into free agency, aka the transfer portal. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll be really interested to see too how year one goes. I mean, they lost a lot of guys. It was a late time for a turnover. The portal's starting to wind down. He's going to have to go all in on the spring to get some players that they're going to be competitive in 2025.
Pete, thank you so much for the information. We look forward to continuing to keep track of things via on3.com and look forward to catching up with you again at some point soon.
You bet. See you guys.
That's Pete Nakos of On3 Sports giving us the latest intel. So do you feel better or worse about the Mike Mathews situation, given that there doesn't seem to be a ton of clarity there?
Yeah, I mean, the update is kind of that there is no update. I think Tennessee fans feel a little bit better than they did when they first saw that tweet or push notification flash across their screen that Mike Mathews plans on entering the portal. For what it's worth, he's re-uploaded all of the Instagram pictures of him wearing Tennessee orange and white back to his page.
So somebody told me this the other day. It's not that they're deleting them. You can archive posts. I had no idea.
You can hide them off of your account.
I'm now showing my age as people, advance through social media at a rate that I'm not accustomed to. I had no idea that this was a thing.
So he's in renegotiations or negotiations, I suppose, however you want to frame it. Tennessee's got to get him back. If he were to hit the portal and go, he wasn't overly productive last year. In fact, Tennessee fans would have loved to see more Mike Mathews snaps. He had 7 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Tennessee, no matter what happens with Mike Mathews, will lose approximately 72% of its receiving production from last year. Dante Thornton to the draft, Brew McCoy to the draft, Squirrel White, one of those guys that hits the portal. They did get some good news yesterday with Miles Kitselman returning to Tennessee, the tight end, the transfer from Alabama, who, by the way, is leaning into the ruling that helped Diego Pavia come back to Vanderbilt. So Kitselman gets another year of eligibility. But there's no question to me that is the position group that has had the most drop-off since that 2022 run. The wide receiver spot. Since that Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt, Ramel Keaton sort of year, Tennessee's got to figure out a way to get back to that success they were having at the position. Chris Brazzell was a big transfer portal acquisition last year, and no question he came up huge in the Alabama game, popped up in some spots, and he should be back next year, but did not have the impact that he was thought to have. So this could look markedly different if you're talking about a wide receiver room that includes Chris Brazzell, Mike Mathews if he returns, Zechariah Branch, the USC transfer, if they can get him in, Braylon Staley, the talented freshman. But I don't know if it's more of Josh Heupel's offense and the way defenses are playing it differently, kind of allowing Tennessee to do more in the run game and not committing to loading the box more. Or I don't know if it's more about individual talent, maybe a little bit of both, because Tennessee had opportunities. They had guys running wide open at times this past season, and Nico wasn't able to take advantage. But I just know it has not looked quite like it did in 2022, especially at that position. And that is a huge point of emphasis for this team this offseason.
Were you somebody, the two of you, given that I'm the only one wearing a power tee today, were the two of you swept up in the Nico Iamaleava rumor mill that he just lightly touched on? Because for those who are not familiar with that situation, and there's nothing that's been made of it since then, but Squirrel White goes into the transfer portal. Nico kind of has a bit of is cryptic too strong a term to describe the post?
No, it's fair. It was
social media.
It was a picture of him in the middle of a drop back, and it's just him in the frame, I think during the Georgia game, and he has like the thinking emoji at the top of the picture on his Instagram story. So, some people saw that and said, oh, is he thinking about leaving? Other people said, oh, he's just wondering who am I going to throw the ball to next year? And then you got Nico's dad, arguing with Vols fans on Twitter saying, we're not going anywhere.
Oh, parents, man, you got to stay off Twitter. I know it's tough. You got to stay off Twitter. Well, it's not worth it.
If anything, that reassured Tennessee fans.
Oh, just to clear it up.
Yeah, I said, no, we haven't, because there were rumors that Nico was starting to, take visits to other places, that Miami is calling. And then Mr. Iamaleava, came to social media to say, no, this is all fabricated.
I don't know. If I was somebody interested in keeping a player's services on my football team, the last place I would want their parents is Vol Twitter. I wouldn't want them anywhere near that acid bath that exists on social media.
They got to get Mac Mathews back, because when you look at what'd I say? Mac Mathews. When you look at guys that have had success in this offense at that position, you look at a lot of guys that made year two jumps, specifically Jalen Hyatt, who was a non-factor in 2021. And then in 2022, he's the Bolitnikoff winner and gets drafted by the Giants. So it's exciting to think about the year two jump he could make as a five-star talent with Nico as his quarterback, but he's got to be in the building to do that. So definitely going to be a pivotal next few days for Tennessee at that position. And Tennessee has got to find a way to elevate the talent level there, because, again, the gap was clear in that Ohio State game, a team with 3 NFL wide receivers. Tennessee's had receiver issues all year long. Nico hadn't been perfect. He's missed some open guys. He's also had plenty of drops in their 2 biggest games of the year, the losses at Georgia and Ohio State.
Do you give any credence, and keep it short because we're running out of time here, but is there any reason to think that Nico may have something to do, his level of performance or lack thereof relative to expectation from whomever it might be, from players, from fans, that he has anything to do with the level of attrition that's going on at the wide receiver spot?
I wouldn't think so. Most of the 5 guys
give that any credence at all?
Not really. The 5 guys that are in the portal weren't really playing. Caleb Webb and Chaz Nimrod were getting some playing time, but Nate Spillman, Nathan Leacock, those guys just weren't seeing the field. Squirrel White was, but he was banged up. He was playing inconsistently. There's not any worry for me about Nico Iamaleava.
Okay.
So not necessarily, but there's no question that wide receiver position is something that Tennessee fans will be keeping an eye on all offseason.
Do I have something to give away?
Yes, 2 tickets to Nelly's concert at Bridgestone Arena next year, as well as a $100 gift card to a Moment's Peace salon and day spa.
Excellent. So all you have to do to win those Nelly tickets and a $100 gift card to the best day spa out there, a Moment's Peace salon and day spa, is call in 615-737-1045 and tell us the thing in sports that made you say, oh no.